sustainability, which is the latest or one of the latest topics in the study text. And we looked at the first 6 units up until the sustainability reporting, the global evolution. So today we will continue from where we stopped and see how much we can cover before we go to bed. So today we'll be looking at the evolution of sustainability in Nigeria. And I think it was AA that asked a question on sustainability in the last class. He was asking on how it started in Nigeria. I wish he was in this class so he could see the unit that covered his question very practically. Okay, so by way of introduction, the early stages of sustainability in Nigeria started or dated back to the oil exploration period during the Niger Delta crisis around 1999, when there was a transition of government and the Yar'Adua government took over. There was the Niger Delta crisis that was triggered by oil spills, gas flaring, deforestation around the Niger Delta area. And the militants started, if we could remember that time, the militants started a lot of destruction, a lot of issues around Niger Delta, kidnappings and banditry, just to express their dissatisfaction of the situation. And this led to the Yar'Adua administration calling them to dialogue, which was a good development that time for the government that just started and had won or had just assumed office. So the issue of sustainability started around that period, 1999 and 2000s in Nigeria. After that, we had the EAI Act, talking about the Environmental Impact Assessment Act, specifically number 86, specifically number 86, that speaks to the fact that, or it was a Nigerian law that requires developers and organizations to assess the potential environmental effects of their proposed project before they are carried out. So that act was enacted to ensure that development projects do not harm the environment, the community, or natural resources. And the key principle behind the act was that no major project shall be undertaken without considering its environmental consequence. That was the key principle or the key takeaway of that act. And the purpose of the EIA Act aimed to identify Sorry, please pardon me. I had some network glitch. Can you please confirm if you can hear me? The network glitched a bit.
I can hear you, sir.
Yes, sir, we can hear you, sir.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I was speaking to the EIA Act and I was talking about the environmental impact and the checks, and I was saying the aim of the act was to identify potential environmental, social, and economic impact of projects early, and to prevent or minimize negative impacts through proper planning, and also to promote sustainable development by balancing economic growth with environmental protection. I think one last aim was to encourage public participation and transparency in project planning and decision making. So, how did the EIA, the Environmental Impact Assessment Act, lead to sustainability? Somebody may ask, how did it lead, or how did it link to how did it lead to sustainability? The EIA Act laid the foundation for sustainable or sustainability practices in Nigeria in the following ways. And I think the first one is environmental protection. By requiring environmental assessments before approval, the Act ensures that projects should consider the air, water, soil, biodiversity, and ecosystem impacts, which is a core principle of sustainability. Second area it led to sustainability was the integration of environmental and economic goals. The Act encouraged organizations to plan projects that meet human needs while preserving natural resources, which aligns with the sustainability triple bottom line we looked at in the last class that speaks to people, planet, and profit. The third area it led to sustainability was the promotion of corporate accountability. Companies became more responsible for their activities that affect the environment and society, laying the groundwork for corporate sustainability reporting and ESG disclosures. You remember that time when the militants were really doing a lot of havoc in the Niger Delta area. One of the things they tabled as their grievances was the effect of companies like Shell, Mobil, Chevron that were into exploration activities in that region to be accountable, especially around the areas of oil spillage, and ensuring that these acts that had messed up their region was brought to a stop. So promotion of corporate accountability led to that. And the fourth one is public awareness and participation. The Act's process required stakeholder consultation, engaging affected communities, which promotes social sustainability and inclusiveness. And the last one is policy influence. The EIA Act influenced later policies and frameworks such as the NESREA. We'll be looking at that, talking about the National Environmental Standards and Regulations Enforcement Agency. The Act, that one came in 2007. It also led to another framework that was called Nigeria's Climate Change Act in 2021. And also frameworks like sustainability reporting guidelines for corporate entities and listed companies. So the EIA Act was a good act, and it really brought some development. Then we have the NESREA, which was an offshoot of the EIA Act. The regulator was for standards and was to fight weak enforcement, corruption, and ensure that the issue of no formal reporting frameworks were brought to a halt. And only some multinational companies issued limited reports driven by their headquarter mandates or something. So these were some of the developments in Nigeria that came about the sustainability practices. Then for corporate social responsibility and early initiatives around this, within the periods also 2000 to 2010, there was the rise of corporate social responsibility in oil and gas, talking about philanthropic giving, education, health, financing, helping the host communities and their residents, especially for those that couldn't afford basic education. So CSR activities around this came about to help foster this and also to help ensure that communities where businesses were domiciled felt the positive impact of those businesses. And it also CSR also came about that period as a compensation plan for those affected communities. CSR was practically, how will I put it now, was practically adopted to help reach out to those communities that were aggrieved by the practices of mostly the oil companies. So the CSR came to be around that 2000 to 2010. Then we also had the NSBP project around 2012. The NSBP project speaks to an initiative talking about the Nigerian Sustainable Banking Principles. That's the NSBP, Nigerian Sustainable Banking Principles. So before 2012, most Nigerian banks focused mainly on profit and growth, with little consideration for environmental or social impacts for their lending and investing or investment activities. And if you remember vividly, the global financial crisis that happened around 2008, 2009, and the increasing climate risks highlighted the need for a more responsible banking sector. So the CBN that time, under the leadership of Professor Charles Soludo, if you remember, introduced the NSBP to align Nigerian banking system with global sustainability standards like the UN Principles for Responsible Banking and the International Financial Corporation, the arm under World Bank's performance standard. The CBN introduced this NSBP to encourage banks to integrate environmental and social risks into their lending and investment decisions. Also, it introduced this NSBP to promote inclusive finance, green investments, and also corporate governance. So the NSBP came to light and also encourage sustainability reporting. The multinational corporations in Nigeria then adopted the global reporting initiatives and global standards. Social issues around poverty, human rights, corruption really gained traction, and it was the talk of the day or talk of the time at that period. Few sustainability reports were issued by companies, and if they were even issued, they were of low quality and little impact. There were no assurance around those reports, and that culminated in questions by the public, and stakeholders needed something more robust and impactful for the community in terms of reporting. Then we had the growing momentum of sustainability around 2010 till date, where the petroleum investment, what's that acronym now? PIA, petroleum. I can't remember. Can somebody remind me? The PIA Act that came about in 2021 during the Buhari administration. PIA Act. Who can remember that acronym now? I know it's petroleum.
Is it Petroleum Industry Act?
Petroleum Industry Act.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you. Petroleum Industry Act. Thanks for the reminder. So the PIA came to reform some oil and gas, to do some oil and gas reforms, and also some ESG focus was injected in that Petroleum Industry Act. And it was signed into law by the then and late President Muhammadu Buhari on, I think, around August 2021, after nearly 2 decades of attempt to reform the Nigerian oil and gas sector. It repealed outdated laws such as the Petroleum Act of 1969 and consolidated various petroleum-related legislation in one comprehensive legal framework. And the goal of that act was to create a transparent, accountable, and sustainable petroleum industry that balances the interest of the government, investors, host community, and the environment entirely. So that act, the objective or the purpose of that act was to design something that will enhance transparency and accountability in the oil and gas sector. And another objective of that act was to attract and retain investment through clear and stable fiscal policies. And very importantly, another objective was to promote environmental sustainability through responsible resource management. That was one of the key objectives. Another was to ensure fair benefit sharing with host communities that were impacted by the activities and operations of these multinational companies. And I think lastly, the objective of the PIA 2021 was to support energy transition and efficient use of petroleum resources. So these were the acts that came lately around 2021, and the oil and gas sector was imparted to help sustainability practices around Nigeria. But then we also had the Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance, 2012, talking about the ethical conduct, how companies were to be governed, and ESG was embedded in that framework in 2018. ESG was embedded in that framework, and it helped to foster and increase the voice of stakeholders, not just shareholders, and helping to ensure that sustainability grew without any restrictions. It grew in leaps and bounds, and the code actually was issued in 2019. The effective date was 2011. It was issued by the Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria, and it related, or it replaced the earlier sector-specific codes like those of the banks, insurance, public companies, to a single unified governance framework for all entities in Nigeria. And the aim was to promote accountability, transparency, ethical leadership, and very importantly, sustainability in Nigerian organizations. So the purpose of the code was to enhance corporate accountability, like I said, and transparency. Number two, foster long-term value creation rather than short-term profits. Another goal was to encourage ethical business conduct and stakeholder inclusiveness, and also to promote sustainable economic development in Nigeria. You see, sustainability was one of the pivotal goals or purpose of the code. In essence, the code was designed to ensure that Nigerian companies are run in a way that balances profitability with social, environmental, and governance responsibilities, which is the essence or the essential or the key aspect of sustainability. So the word sustainability was not just mentioned in the code, it was embedded throughout the code. You see that if you have that document, the code recognized that sustainability or sustainable success comes from integrating environmental, social, and governance consideration into business strategy. So that code was good, and it helped foster a lot of benefits and offspring of sustainability in Nigeria. Then the next one was the NGX, talking about the Nigerian Stock Exchange. NGX came also in 2018 with sustainable reporting guidelines, and that helped to also lend a voice to the sustainability for a conversation we were speaking about. So the NGX, or the Nigerian Stock Exchange, helped to impact the sustainability arena. So one of the frameworks the Nigerian corporate reporting environment helped to balance was the coming of the NGX, or speaking to the issue of sustainability by the Nigerian Stock Exchange. It had these guidelines that came about in, I think, around December 2018, and listed companies, public interest companies must report from 2019 based on those guidelines, especially in the areas of sustainability. Now, these guidelines were designed to help listed companies integrate environmental, social, and governance considerations into their business operations and reporting. The NGX 2018 guidelines really marked a major step towards embedding sustainability into Nigeria's capital market, and aligning with global practices like the Global Reporting Initiatives, GRI, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, and the UN's Global Impact. And the purpose of the NGX sustainability disclosures or disclosure guidelines were aimed at promoting transparency and accountability among listed companies, ensuring that long-term business sustainability and responsible corporate behavior was enhanced, and also enabling investors and stakeholders to make informed decisions using ESG data. and also aligning Nigerian companies with global sustainability reporting standard. So essentially, the NGX guidelines bridged financial performance with non-financial performance, ensuring that companies report not just profit, but their impact on people and the planet. Still speaking to stressing the importance of the triple bottom line we spoke about in the last class. So governments adopted SDGs, talking about sustainable development goals in development plans in Nigeria, and also sustainable investment gained traction around that time, and ESG products started emerging. Also, we had stakeholder pressure, chief security officers, the media, and communities being pressured to align with these sustainability practices. And also growth in sustainability consultancies came about. A lot of firms, accounting firms had some arms like the Big Four. Some had departments of sustainability consultation. ESG experts were sprouting up, and university curriculums were integrated with the sustainability subject. So it really grew around that period to impact the Nigerian business space and also the education space. And also we had the influence of global standards from 2020 till date. And that's what has integrated some of this curriculum into the ICAN case study, SBR, AAA papers. We had the international standards on sustainability board speaking to the IFRS S1 and S2 that pushed standardization in Nigeria. The ISSB and IFRS S1 and S2 came to Nigeria around this period. So we're in 2025 now, but you see the review of this syllabus had to integrate this because the benefits were global comparability, transparency, and enhancing investor confidence in integrating these standards. Though it's without challenges, but then aside the challenges, there are benefits. The challenges notwithstanding: low data availability, weak enforcement, capacity gaps, talking about skills, human and financial, talking about training needs and being tech savvy, small and medium scale enterprises limitations. These are some of the challenges faced currently actually in achieving the goals and benefits of integrating the ISSB and IFRS S1 and 2 in Nigeria. Some of these challenges, comparing them with the opportunities, are far apart. The opportunities are way more weightier than the challenges. Some of the challenges speaks to weak enforcement in Nigeria, corruption, low awareness, poor data availability, short-termism in terms of business operations. Business are always after short-term profits. Capacity constraints, insecurity are some of the challenges. But you see, the opportunities outweigh the challenges. The opportunities, if embraced and integrated, are very good. The opportunity to be tech savvy for organizations, for individuals, getting data, reporting, green financing, capacity building, the stronger regulations it enhances, the public-private partnerships it fosters, the awareness campaigns, the national framework, and the sustainable use of natural resources really are benefits and opportunities that, if explored and integrated, could blow up the country. And a lot of countries that have integrated this are finding the benefits massive and very, very beneficial to the growth of the country. So we have key players that had been into this sustainability struggle. In the government of Nigeria, we had the NESREA, we have the CBN, the SEC, the FRC, and the Ministry of Environment, who are key players that had helped champion the conversation around sustainability. Then the Nigerian Stock Exchange required reports from listed companies around the subject of sustainability. We also had players like the multinational companies, local listed firms, oil and gas companies, banking firms, and the telecommunication. They all played a pivotal role and were key players in ensuring sustainability. Chief security officers, financial institutions, consultancy organizations like ICAN and ANAN, universities also played a good role to ensuring that sustainability came to stay. And the future outlook for this speaks to stronger regulations and enforcement. The ESG investment and investing in that space will keep rising, and consumers and more sustainable consumers and more stakeholders are becoming sustainability conscious daily. And being tech savvy is better for ESG data collection and reporting. So most organizations are employing technology, digital tools to foster this and ensure it comes to stay. Also, global greater collaboration, government, private, and global bodies are aligning with Nigeria to enhance and sustain this movement. So Nigeria is still trying to catch up, in my final thoughts, but momentum is building with robust frameworks, enforcements, awareness, and collaboration to help sustainability drive growth, protect the environment, and improve livelihoods, just to enhance and ensure the better life. Most of what we want as individuals and as persons is better life, better living. That's all. You want to live better, you want to do better, and sustainability is the key to that. So for our exams, for the ICAN case study, if asked about sustainability integrated into any of these requirements, either one or two, there is no need speaking to the history that much. But then some of these acts that we've spoken about, most especially the ISSB, IFRS S1 and S2, can be integrated into our answers. Just having this global or this national, local trajectory, this local story we just spoke about, you could integrate it into one of your data and information box in talking about the sustainability emergence in Nigeria. So some of the challenges we spoke about have been looked at initially, and I think this is a duplication of the slides in one of the conversations around that. Okay, so that's the end of the evolution on sustainability in Nigeria. Okay, so do we have any questions? I think A is on the call now because he asked that question, that do we have any frameworks? So I can see A on the call. So A, I think you've gotten some light or some explanation on how sustainability and some of the key players in government in Nigeria started. And I think we'll still look at sustainability. Yes, please. Yeah, please go ahead.
No, I'm just aligning with what you have said. I have gotten insights into Nigeria's sustainability evolution.
Exactly. And there'll still be more conversations in the units to come. So just stay tuned and you'll be well abreast with the facts on how sustainability is being sustained currently in Nigeria. All right, so thank you for that feedback and that engagement. So let's look at the next unit, speaking to sustainable finance. Please interject freely if you're coming for the first time. We have a very free floor where we share our thoughts, share any concerns, observations, comments, contributions. Please share freely. You can just raise your hand or interject and I'll give you the floor. So we do that to help address any concerns and any issues around challenges with the lectures. So if you're coming for the first time, I can see Angela on the call. I think this is the first time you'll be on the call. It's nice to have you. So please interject freely where you have any questions or challenge, and let's address those questions. Okay, so speaking to sustainable finance and responsible investments is one of the key topics or key units in the new syllabus that was injected by ICAN. So the concept around sustainable finance and responsible investment speaks to financial activities that integrate ESG, environmental, social, and governance factors into promoting sustainable development. That's the general idea about sustainable finance and responsible investment. RI talks about investment strategy embedding ESG, that is to enhance risk management and adjusted returns plus positive profit. So responsibility investment or responsible investment speaks to an investment strategy embedding ESG, to enhance risk-adjusted returns and also positive impact. And the ESG factors we speak to talks about the environment, climate, biodiversity, waste, social, labor rights, and all that. Then the social talks about inclusivity, rights, and diversity of operations, especially the gender equality and all those social inclusion. Then we have the governance around board composition, ethical frameworks, and transparency around management reportings. So the impact and the measurable impact of investing in ESG and the outcomes, talking about non-financial and financial returns, is what responsible financing is all about. Then green financing speaks to project funding with environmental benefits. So anything that affects the environment, not just the business and profit, is what green financing speaks to. So social responsible investing talks about older and ethical-based exclusions around tobacco, weapon usage, and all that. All these are discouraged. Investment in tobacco, weapons are discouraged, but responsible financing speaks to investment in ensuring sustainability of the environment. And the drivers of this growth speaks to climate change, social inequality awareness, investor demand, especially the millennials and upcoming Gen Zs. So these are the drivers of this growth, talking about responsible investment. And the regulatory push around the European Union taxonomy, the SFDR, the SCRDs, and mandatory disclosures around the West have pushed for these legislations to ensure that responsible financing and the ESG frameworks are integrated into everything that has to do with responsible financing. And better ESG data and analytics has come to also drive this growth of this movement. And the evidence of good financial performance is a driver of this growth. Also, stakeholders and societal pressure are also drivers of the growth of this conversation. The new business opportunities and risk management and mitigation frameworks have come to also stay. So sustainable finance has a current broader framework. It has blown off in Europe, so it's coming gradually into Africa. And it speaks to environmental finance, talking about financing areas around climate change, biodiversity, pollution projects, and decreasing the negative impact of pollution on the environment. Also, we have the social finance, talking about reduction, and one of the SDG goals is to bring poverty to the barest minimum, reduce inequality, enhance education, enhance health around the country. So these frameworks are sustainable practices, and the players globally are pushing or beckoning on investors to invest in countries that need improvement in this area. So green finance speaks to renewable energy, agricultural practices, efficiency in management of companies and resources. So green financing are also encouraged by the key players globally and locally of this movement. Also, we have the climate finance around mitigation and adaptation measures to ensure that the climate, we've been hearing of climate change, global warming, is not impacted negatively. And we also have sustainable investing, talking about integrating ESG, which are non-financial indicators, and the financial performance of a company to be the same in their reporting structure. So key instruments around this speaks to bonds. We talked about green bonds, opportunity to invest in green bonds, like the normal bonds you have, invest in it, and they use those bonds to finance green projects. We also have social sustainability and sustainability linked projects that these green bonds could finance. Then we have loans, green loans that help finance social and sustainability linked projects. Then funds that came about that 2010 period brought about the Education Trust Fund, and it was a product of ESG, ETF, and the impact funds. You could see what these ETFs have been doing around universities, building of infrastructure, classrooms, and several projects that the ETF came. And it's a product of sustainability around the country. There's hardly any federal university you go to, you don't see ETF products or buildings in that space. So other areas around financing speaks to the microfinance, the carbon finance, and you can see that the microfinance, most of them have come and they've come in their numbers in the country. There are so many, and some of them have these ESG and sustainability practices that are embedded in their operations. So responsible financing approaches speaks to ESG integration, a systemic or systematic inclusion in analysis, and negative screening and exclusions are discouraged, and also positive screening, best in class ESG leaders are encouraged in this space. Thematic investing or investment speaking to renewable energy, ensuring clean water, and impactful investing, looking at investing and also the measurable outcomes that are sustainable, are areas that responsible investment approaches are encouraged. Also, active ownership and shareholder engagement, proxy voting are part of this responsible investment, and also the norms-based screening that came about by the UN, the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, the UN Global Projects adherence have helped to screen this responsible investment and also push or drive the spread of this gospel of sustainability. So generally the benefits are enormous because responsible investment helps better long-term financial performance. It reduces risk around negative climate impact, negative reputational and regulatory risks, compliance risks, and also helps foster positive societal and environmental impact. So also it enhances reputation and stakeholder trust in that company. And also finally, it helps build long-term value creation in that economy. But the challenges are always there, speaking to no universal definition or metrics on sustainability, also data gaps and poor quality, the issue of greenwashing risk. That means we spoke about greenwashing risk in the last class. We said is the risk of reporting by companies in their financial reports around sustainability that don't exist, just like window dressing their sustainability practices that are not true. Also, the short-term return pressures for companies is another challenge. Then fiduciary duty misconceptions around sustainability is what is bedeviling companies on sustainability practices, and limited expertise around sustainability and transparency in reporting and operations are some of the challenges faced. Also, we have the complex ESG trade-offs and impact measurement issues on sustainability. Then we have weak regulation in some markets. So the opportunities outweigh these challenges because the growing demand for ESG products and services are skyrocketing every day. The demand for tech and AI enabling environment and better data analysis is also growing sporadically. Also, regulatory backing by frameworks like the International Sustainability Standards Board and global reporting initiatives, global standards are coming to back this movement. And we have financial innovation around responsible financing, new instruments coming to enhance this mission, and also greater collaboration with governments and investors across the globe has fostered or enhanced this movement to come to stay. So we have future trends for this movement on responsible financing, and the mainstream adoption of ESG is one of it, because the mainstream adoption of ESG globally is a future trend that has come to stay. It's the future and is really happening now. And the focus on climate change and just transition is also the part of the future we're talking about. Development of transition, sustainability-linked bonds is coming to stay. And artificial intelligence, tech-driving ESG analytics is coming and is here. And stronger impacts, measurement frameworks, integration of natural capital in finance is the future. So my final thoughts on these are sustainability finance and responsible investment or investing are transforming capital allocation, and the shift is gradually moving from profit to sustainability. That profit motive, there's a shift currently moving to not just the single objective of profit, but then a holistic and futuristic outlook on sustainability and ensuring the business is sustainable throughout generations. That's the shift. And the alignment and the financial flows with ESG and creating long-term value, tackling climate change, social and governance challenges are the essence of sustainable financing. So as accountants and financial or finance professionals, we must understand that these tools to stay relevant and supportive is the essence of a sustainable economy. So we are here to drive this agenda. We are here, of course, we're learning, we'll pass the exams and definitely become qualified. But then when you qualify, that doesn't end the sustainability conversation. So the sustainability will meet you in your office. You should be agents that foster and drive this movement, because sustainability is not just for now, but it's for the future generations. This is very important. So back to our exam, a tip around this speaks to very possibly a requirement comes on sustainable finance and responsible investing. So always mention ESG and the green impact finance instruments. And when it comes to the fourth box around challenges, issues and options, the challenges around data and greenwashing should come to bear. Don't forget in any requirement, especially the fourth box, speaking to challenges and options. And also the global reporting frameworks could be integrated, especially the ISSB, IFRS S1 and 2. And maybe if it comes to your thoughts, the European Union taxonomy, if asked, could suffice practically. All right, so that's it about sustainable finance and responsible investment conversation and the unit that speaks to that practically. Okay, so do we have any questions, any contributions, observations on this unit? Okay, thank you, Angela. I saw your emoji. Thank you for that. All right. So before we go to bed, before it's 9, let's look at this last or this unit. It's not the last unit though. Let's speak to this unit. It's also a new addition to the new syllabus of case study. Speaking to the Equator Principles, EAPS, the Equator Principles. The Equator Principle speaks to the voluntary global risk management framework adopted by financial institutions to manage environmental and social risk in financial or project management. So we're talking about equating or equality, and this framework has come to ensure that environmental and social risks are managed in project finance or any finance or investment or finance in any global course. Equator Principle talks about giving equity and ensuring that risk around disenfranchisement and inequality are mitigated adequately. So it applies to projects that are greater than $10 million across 4 products. Number 1, project finance advisory, generally project finance, project-related corporate loans, and bridge loans. So the Equator Principles apply to projects above $10 million from large donors or investors. So they are around, they speak to 4 products and services around project finance advisory, project finance, project-related corporate loans, and bridge loans. So based on the International Finance Corporation of the World Bank, their performance standard plus the World Bank's guidelines speaks to enhancing Equator Principles. And the core features of Equator Principles talk about risk categorization. Risk management is a core of tool embedded in Equator Principles project or conversation. The risk categorization, looking at high risks, medium risk, and low risk, categorizing them as A, B, C is part of the framework for Equator Principles. Number 2 is the environmental and social assessment, ESA, required for A, that is high projects, and medium risk projects. Then we have the environmental and social management structure action plan, talking about AP, and also mitigation and reporting, ensuring that the environment, social factors are integrated into this plan and not just profit motive. Then we also have the stakeholder engagement, which is meaningful impact, and it helps for indigenous people, ensuring that the environment or the community are not impacted negatively. So all stakeholders, not just shareholders, are integrated into these decisions. So equity in integrating every stakeholder is what this movement on equality principles and the conversation is about. We also have the grievance mechanisms for communities to be able to express themselves where they are dissatisfied or are not happy with the input and the impact of the companies or investors in their space. And also the independent review of the ESA and the AP are also part of this project or this Equator Principles to help have an independent outlook, like a code review or a peer review, to see how positively this is impactful and whether it's negatively impacting the populace. We also have loan covenants like bonds and restricted financing, where the borrower has to comply to the terms of the funds very expressly. We also have monitoring and reporting and regular updates to the body that regulates this responsible Equator Principles and the global reporting framework around monitoring that these projects are fostered and implemented. We also have the transparency framework that helps and ensures public publication or publicizing of these reports to ensure that the public is aware of every operations and everything that transpired in their activities. So the strengths around these EPIs or EPS is that it promotes responsible lending, and minimum due diligence standards are enhanced by the Equator Principles. The Equator Principles promote responsible lending, and minimum due diligence standards are enhanced. Another strength is that it improves transparency and empowers communities to be impacted positively by this movement. It also influences corporate behavior towards better ESG practices. This is key. And without criticisms or challenges, we have challenges around voluntary adoption. It's currently not universal and is currently not prevalent or predominant in Nigeria. It's still upcoming, speaking to the Equator Principles. And we also have challenges around weak enforcement and inconsistent application, especially around Africa. We also have limited scope, and mainly project finance is having a more robust scope. But around the Equator Principles, there's limited scope, and the focus on process is what drives companies currently, not the outcomes. The focus on process is the challenge. We also have the risk of greenwashing, like we spoke about, window dressing reporting on sustainability. That may not be really true. And we have no independent oversight body currently that monitors these Equator Principles, especially in Africa. So the future of Equator Principles, irrespective of the challenges, is that an evolution is sprouting up, is already here to address climate change. There's a revolution to address climate change, and the Equator Principle is what it's all about, to address biodiversity and to enhance human rights. That's the future of the EPS. And also more global adoption and scrutiny is coming to bear. It's a widespread agenda in the West currently, but then it's coming to Africa. More global adoption and scrutiny is coming, and that's the future. And it will soon be here in full scale. And the integration with sustainable development goals with Equator Principles are aligning together, coming to synergize and also fight the menace of inequality, climate harm, human dignity eroded by poverty, sickness, ill health. So these frameworks are coming together to enhance ESG standards, and all in the bid to make the planet better for humanity. That's the quest, to make living better. And in the words of the late Jim Rohn, just to have better life. Let life be worth living. You should be happy living life, have a good life, not you're living life burden. Like they said, there's a statistic that in Africa, a large population live less than $1 a day. I mean, that's bad living, bad living because of the high rate of poverty. And some of these ESG, EPS principles, EPS frameworks have come to fight that low standard of living as a result of the region's issues and challenges. Also, the future of EPS speaks to stronger climate focus around emission requirements, and the CBN's sustainable banking practices is one of the frameworks that have come to help sustainability in this area, and also to enhance the Equator Principle agenda. So the SBN was launched by CBN around 2021, and it guided banks, or is a guide for banks to integrate ESG in their lending and operational activities. The core principles around SBN speaks to, number one, the environmental and social risk, ESRM, and the number two, social specific guidance on oil and gas, agriculture, and manufacturing. And also another principle is resource efficiency. Also, financial inclusion is also a principle in that sustainability agenda for CBN. Capacity building, stakeholder engagement, very important. Disclosure and reporting, governance and collaborations were the goals for the SBN based on CBN's integration. So responsible finance in Nigeria, beyond that SBN, speaks to fair and transparent lending to the public, consumer protection, financial literacy, combating financial crime and terrorist financing, ethical governance, and sustainable debt management. So the impact of SBN has gone beyond just the framework. It was there and is sprouting to, or moving into the future to enhance greater ESG awareness. And banks and the CBN has encouraged commercial banks, development banks, microfinance banks to adopt ESG into their framework, to also enhance sustainable lending products like green loans we spoke about, social bonds, and to enhance stronger stakeholder management. Even though there are challenges which are prevalent, and we've spoken about them around weak enforcement, poor ESG data, capacity gaps, short-term profit focus, limited incentives, and cultural resistance to these changes are there, but that won't stop that agenda from moving forward, because that shift is very important, especially for a downtrodden and backward region like Africa. We need some of these frameworks to really help provide some catalyst for us to enhance the better living. There was a disturbing statistics I saw that about 90% of Nigerians live or earn below 200,000. I mean, that statistic, if true, was very disturbing, very, very disturbing. I mean, 90%, you have this unequal or unequal distribution of income or of resources, very unequal. So these frameworks should are here to some extent cause a shift from that very negative. If you look at developed countries, you see that the gap between the rich and the poor is bridged. Essential services, essential needs are met. by governments and some very well-meaning individuals, which is not the case in Africa. So it's good that the challenges are there, but then we need such frameworks to enhance these equality principles. And the way forward is the regulatory framework should be enhanced and should be pushed to be driven by private, public, and every regulatory body that could do that, which is better. And ESG data should be enhanced. The way forward is also capacity building, incentives, for example, tax breaks, tax incentives, and also collaboration. And the SDG goals alignment could help push this agenda forward. So final thoughts on this: the Equator Principles are of global baselines for sustainable project financing, and the CBN's SBN is Nigeria's local framework currently that is driving ESG in banking. And together, we can improve transparency, accountability, and responsible financing. And in my own words, I think better living for Nigerians and Africans, and globally, humanity. So driving it back to exams, when you have a requirement speaking to the Equator Principle, you should be able to align global voluntary standards and those that are mandatory, talking about the CBN's integration of SBNs, which is a local Nigerian mandatory guideline for banks to show the international and domestic ESG alignment, and part of what Nigeria is doing to integrate these global practices into our framework. This is very important. All right, it's 10:01. I think we landed on a good note. We'll stop here. Any questions? We have any questions, any contributions on this conversation? Any questions? Okay, if we don't have any questions, we may have the next class on Friday,